Hello, folks. This is Ozzy. Thanking you again for tuning in to season 2's On the Call, produced by the Stars Among Us. My thank you tour to those who have impacted my life in one way or another. This is my thank you card to them all. So for this 5th episode of season 2, I introduce you to Leon. Hello, Leon.
Hello, Ozzy. How are you? And good evening, everyone.
We've known Leon for his 118-mile journey.
We started on October 1st at the 59th Street Bridge, the actual Queen side of the 59th Street Bridge.
I want people to know who Leon is. He's also been a COVID survivor. You are now going back to your political science.
We're
happy to have you. Happy to know that you've been through what you've been through and you're sitting, walking here, right? So you've impacted me so much that it was important that I have you on here.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here. I guess with all that's been going on around us, I had to define for myself a manner in which I could respond to what's been going on. And the silent walk came to me. And so what I tried to do with the silent walk is not let the noise dictate what it is that we are trying to say, and not let someone else spin what we are trying to say. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to say is that the acts of police brutality must stop. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing it in a manner in which no one can misinterpret what my purpose is. And with the help of the Black Lives Matters movement out here on the eastern end of Long Island, and the number of people that have joined me on this walk, I am very, very pleased. And I can only say that for the thought to germinate in my mind and to see it actualize, it's just been an amazing, amazing experience.
And with that, introducing the Black Lives Movement out there, who was the first one that you became in contact with?
I met Curtis Harris the morning I was about to start. Mm-hmm. And you know the old saying that God works in mysterious ways? Right. Well, I was on the Long Island Railroad on my way to the 59th Street Bridge, and I spilled my water and decided to sit on the upper deck of the Long Island Railroad. And sitting across from me was a gentleman that was looking at his iPad, and I noticed that he had on a 27 hat. 27 is the street out here that runs the length of Long Island. It's Sunrise Highway to a lot of people. And somehow we were able to catch each other's eye and start a conversation. I had on my Black Lives Matter apparel. He had on his 27 hat. But the interesting piece was that when I mentioned to Curtis what I was doing, after he listened, he looked me right in the eye and he said, "What are you going to do when you get to the eastern end of Long Island?" And I said, "I have this idea, but I haven't formulated to that degree." And he said, "Would you mind if I helped you?" And it was and everything has fallen in place because of that.
What I'd like to do is now introduce Curtis. Curtis was raised in Sag Harbor, New York, comes from a family with strong roots in civil rights. His grandfather, William Booth, marched with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and served as a New York State Supreme Court Justice. His mom, Jeannie Booth, had a TV show in Providence, Rhode Island called Shades on PBS that highlighted social issues affecting the diaspora. He still lives in East End and works in the financial risk in New York City. He's also studied in Europe, and I guess it's been entrenched in his DNA, the social movements and causes and been involved in protests and events from London during his studies, I guess. Is that correct, Curtis? To Long Island, which you'll correct.
That is true.
If that's wrong.
That is absolutely true. I went to school in London, and I really got involved in social protests with the anti-war movement. Being an American overseas, I got to have a different perspective.
Willie Jenkins.
Hello, how you doing?
Jenkins.
I was a member of Eastern Unity, creator of the Zenith Youth Program.
You've also been an organizer of the Bridgehampton Day, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you could explain those two things, that would be great.
So first and foremost, the Zenith Youth Program is a program I created. It kind of spawned from the Unity program, which I was a part of, which is no longer active, but it gave us access to learning about African American history and African history that's not taught in schools. We learned about the knowledge that was in Africa and the mathematics and the manuscripts and scrolls that came from there. So you get a different perspective from the world view of that. Things that you never thought came out of Africa, actually a lot of learning and knowledge came out of Africa, not just slaves, not just gold or diamonds that people, stole from there. And you get a better perspective on the African people themselves, because they're often looked down upon or look like they didn't never do anything. If you look at history, you learn in school, you wouldn't think Africans did anything.
Right.
You would think, the Europeans did everything, which it's neither here nor there. But at least we got to learn about that, and then they brought it over to African American history. People, inventors, spokesmen, people, that just did a bunch of different things. In African American history that you never ever would have learned about in school. They only teach you about like 5 people, the same 5 people: Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass. It's the same 5 people. But then you learn about people like Marcus Garvey, which they don't really teach you about in school. Medgar Evers. We learned about Emmett Till. You learned about Nat Turner. People that they don't never bring up, and even inventors, like I said before, that invented things you never knew about. Like we play all these video games. The first video game cartridge in cartridge form that made it possible for games to be sold on a massive scale was invented by a Black person, which I never knew.
Not surprised.
And then like I also say like the Super Soaker, which is a toy that we all played with and still play with to this day, was invented by a Black person. And you never know things like that, and more important things than that. But these are just things that you learn about. And you're like, wow. And now you got a sense of pride. Like we invented a myriad of things, and it's so important that to have this knowledge, especially with self-worth and looking at the world from a different view. So it's not about overshadowing anybody's culture, white, Black, brown, anybody's culture, but being inclusive and learning about it. And then you have respect and understanding for everybody, and then you feel more pride, and then you have that sense of pride where you're out in the world, and now you're not just like feeling down about your race or letting anybody talk crazy about you. The location is going to be at the Bridgehampton Child Care Center. Yeah. That's in Bridgehampton. It's a place I grew up going to. It's going to be held there. It's 20 people going to be able to be in the class itself because of COVID, so we got to be careful. And then it's going to be also Zoomed. So like we're on a Zoom call now. We'll send out a link that day or that week, and then you'll be able to sign in. Right. And we'll be able to interact with the students that are going to be doing it interactively over the internet, via phone, via laptop, whichever the case may be.
Range? When you say youth, is there an age range?
Yeah, well, we wanted to do it to where the kids don't lose their concentration and bouncing off the wall. So teens typically can hold their attention for longer. So 13 to 19 is the range that I want to set upon. Anybody that's younger, if their parents want them to participate, I have no problem with that. I just would like their parents to sit in with them, or we want to make this as fun as possible, but we want to also, serious topics that we're talking about. So we want to do a mixture. So we just got to, have the attention.
Okay, what is your dream for this?
My dream for this is just the knowledge being spread. Like I said, the youth understanding more about their culture and being proud of their culture and sharing that culture with people who aren't from that culture. Now, they spread that knowledge. Knowledge is power. You're asking me about Bridgehampton Day.
Yes.
Bridgehampton Day is, I'm from Bridgehampton, New York. A lot of people don't know that I'm from an affluent African American community. It was thriving years ago with such pride. Just mostly Black people down on the part where I was from. It's a red line neighborhood. That means, it was cut off from the rest of Bridgehampton, and all the Black people lived in one spot. But the pride, the knowledge, the talent that comes from there is extraordinary. And unfortunately, it was massively gentrified, and everybody got pushed out. Right. But we all come back together on a day that I designated, and I worked with the center, and we got a date designated in the summertime where we all come back together. People come from all over, wherever they're living at, no matter what. If they're down south, across country, they come back. If you're up island, they come back, and we just celebrate our culture because we have such a strong, rich history from Bridgehampton, and we're very, very proud people. The Killer Bees, #1 state champions in New York State. We just celebrate our culture, our history, our talent. We have food. I get vendors from all around. If you have a business, I'm very big on promoting business. So if you have and you can just sell whatever you need to sell, promote whatever you need to promote. We have games for the kids. We promote voting registration. We have the fire department come down. It's for Bridgehampton and outside communities as well come together, and we just celebrate our rich history. Thank you for having me. One real quick, Curtis, you are a godsend. Thank you for connecting me with Leon. Leon, you are a godsend. Thank you for what you're doing. I haven't said this enough. Curtis Harris has always been a gentleman and a great man and a scholar, and since we were little kids, he's always been a stand-up person. And thank you so much for what you did, because none of this would be possible without you and Leon. Thank you. I salute you. You have a wonderful day. It was wonderful talking to you guys. Have a good night.
Two-way street.
Good night, Willie.
Good
night. We'll see you soon.
So let me intro Lisa. Lisa is a community organizer who works on civil rights and human rights issues right there in Long Island. Even while she's doing everything that I'm going to tell you that she's doing, audience, she's also working on her bachelor's in social sciences with a focus on international human rights at SUNY Empire State. Miss Lisa last year decided to volunteer at Sanctuary Caravan and took her, down to Tijuana, now 5 times, to help asylum seekers who were seeking safety in the US. Lisa has helped to lead the Black Lives Matter movement on the East End this past summer with her first protest alongside Willie and another Lisa after George Floyd's death. She's also been an advocate for friends and relatives on Shinnecock Indian Reservation. She's joined the Southampton Town Police Department Community Advisory Panel. Very important with what also Leon is doing. It's interesting. She's had some initiatives that have been involved with helping to pass marriage equality in New York as to the hate crimes and incidents of hate that were happening after the tragic death of Marcelo Lucero in Patchogue. He's a fierce advocate for immigrant social justice issues on Long Island, and most recently was the award recipient of Jobs with Justice's Mary DeWar Human Rights Award. On top of that, Miss Thing has a daughter, single mom. Man, all the help that we can give you with your bachelor's is most warranted. Thank you, thank you, thank you for doing what you're doing. It has to come from the heart because there's a lot that you're doing.
It always sounds like so much more when someone else says it.
Where did this passion begin? I can know where it came with Curtis, but where did yours begin?
In an odd way, it was my conservative father, blue-collar auto mechanic guy from Long Island, Italian, but he was involved with Kiwanis. So as a kid, we would, on Christmas and Thanksgiving, we'd pick up homeless people. While everybody else was working, I got to spend time with people. And we would volunteer for like Special Olympics. So I think my dad early on instilled doing for others as a really important value. I think it took an awful twist I think it backfired on him a little bit. I always felt like everybody should be equal. Like I always found like the intrinsic worth of everybody at a table. Like, so eventually it just kind of rolled over into community organizing.
When did you become part of the
Yes.
police department community advisory panel?
So that actually came from Governor Cuomo, that executive order back in June.
Yeah.
That every municipality in New York State that has a police department had to create these community law enforcement review committees. And they put out a whole workbook on what needs to be addressed, and best practices that they kind of pulled together from across the US. So it was kind of funny because I'm super active in Black Lives Matter. I was from the first round years ago with Black Lives Matter for the supervisor of our town and the town police chief. I mean, they know I get along with them, but they knew I was going to call them out if I saw something that wasn't correct. So I kind of gave them the chance to say like, okay, Lisa, maybe we'll take back this invitation. But both of them were really committed to actually seeing if there was changes that needed to be made. And we're actually one of the only, on Long Island at least, we're one of the only municipalities that has a functioning committee at this point, and we're already reviewing policies, and we're getting into the 50A repeal, and so we're actually
in doing that, you're finding that the police are there to make change, they're ready mentally to make the changes necessary? Or is it a hard road?
Lisa, you're so correct. And I just wanted to just add one caveat about the East End. The East End is broken up into different jurisdictions where the Suffolk County Police Department doesn't have jurisdiction in Southampton and East Hampton town. So you don't see Suffolk County Police Departments in our area. It's all, everything is policed by local departments. So we have an East Hampton village, a Southampton village, an East Hampton town, and a Southampton town. We also have a Sag Harbor Police Department. So it's very disparate as opposed to the way the rest of Long Island is.
And I will say, a lot of times when I talk to people, we're very fortunate. Southampton town, it really is taking this process seriously. But say if I go, 10 minutes west and I'm in Suffolk County jurisdiction, there's major issues in Suffolk County. So it's a totally different dynamic. And you saw that with the protests over the summer, because you would go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And you could almost see like the way departments handled it differently. In my opinion, Southampton Town Police, they partnered with us on our protests, which a lot of people were like, really? But they were supportive. And
there's some serious forward thinking there.
Well,
yeah. And
I can add that, a lot of the police are local. I grew up with a lot of police men and women that patrol Southampton, East Hampton, Sag Harbor. So that's a different dynamic. So we're actually going back 30 years where, the police actually know the jurisdiction that they're policing. They know what's going on in their towns. So the dynamic between police and the community is very different.
Yes.
As opposed to other parts of Long Island, other parts of New York State and the country. And I just wanted to, and it's so important to make that clear, because the East End of Long Island is very distinct because of that.
And what's very interesting, just to piggyback on that, is that for NYPD, you're not allowed to work in the zip code that you live in. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. If it's, there's something to say that if you're an officer out here and, you know, you disrespect me, and I need to make a complaint, and then I bump into you at the supermarket the next day, that's a much different dynamic than, you know, say Suffolk County, where like it's almost like the wild, wild west at times. They're actually under an agreement with the Department of Justice for their vagrant civil rights violations.
Wow. But you just say that phrase again. You're saying that in NYPD, you're not allowed to work in the jurisdiction in which you live.
Yeah. So it's funny because that's a rule there, but out here, our police tend to live in the zip code where they work.
In the NYPD, it's actually, to be precise, it's 2 precincts. You can't be within 2 precincts of the area that you control.
So then why, because that's sort of like, because on one hand, what is being said is that they want people to work within the areas within which they live. But you're saying that legally it's not allowed?
I wouldn't say it's a legal thing. It's more of a bylaw thing within the code of how the NYPD operates. It's not a legal thing because it did happen. I mean, we can go back 30 years and there were police men and women that patrolled their neighborhoods. I mean, we can talk to anybody and they can go back to the good old days.
Right.
But that's something that's departmental.
Yeah, it's a department policy that the NYPD has in place. The highest concentration of NYPD officers that live outside the city happens to be in Smithtown in Suffolk County, where we do see, like when there was a lot of strife over BLM protests over the summer, Smithtown was in the center of that. And that's not something that we can just, you know, gloss over and ignore, because there was a lot of off-duty NYPD officers that were there and not acting officerly at all.
Let's introduce Sierra.
Joyelli. Hi, everyone.
Sierra is also a mom, an educator, a full-time student, missionary, and an activist. Traveled on medical mission trips, including a trip in 2017 to Darfur, Haiti, to work with orphan, disabled children. In the wake of the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Sierra began organizing protests in Quran and will assist Willie Jenkins in teaching classes for the Zenith youth program.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me.
I first came to learn of Sierra with her walks with Mr. Leon Goodman here. I got accustomed to seeing her face. Sierra, what is your reason for being involved?
My children motivated me because I would like them to grow up in a world where they are not profiled, where they don't have to face bias and judgment and hatred because of the color of their skin.
What has been the thing that has impacted you the most here this year, aside from COVID, when it comes to your activism? Impacted you negatively and impacted you positively?
Watching the news and watching all of the injustice that our Black brothers and sisters have faced in the wake of the death of George Floyd. I was impacted by that because George Floyd was not only a human being, but he was someone's son. He cried for his mama. He was someone's brother. He was someone's uncle. He was someone's friend. And most importantly, he was someone's father. With all of the brutality that happens to our Black brothers, our Black sisters, I needed to do something. I needed to do my part. I couldn't sit back and not become involved in protesting against the police brutality. And then hearing about Breonna Taylor and how she was doing nothing wrong. She was sleeping in her home. And so I will continue to use my voice. I will continue to use my legs and walk alongside of Mr. Leon Goodman. I know he gets upset when we call him Mr., but out of respect to me, he's Mr. Leon. And I was raised that way, to always respect, to show respect. So I have a 16-year-old son, I have a 13-year-old son, and I also have a 6-year-old daughter who is very proud to be Black. She is all about Black Lives Matter. That's Gianna, my Gigi. And I have a 5-year-old son. And what I teach my daughter is to embrace who she is and to love her coily hair and to love her brown skin, because she's beautiful. Brown, Black is beautiful.
So with your children and with some of the things that can happen out there on the streets as a group now, guys, what do you do to protect yourselves out there?
You know, that's a really good question. And that's something that has me thinking every single day, every single minute. You know, the thing that watching the injustice in government is one thing, because we've seen that for 300 years.
Right.
I've read about America self-correcting many times. And the thing that shocks me today is the reaction to the injustice, the governmental injustice, the extrajudicial actions, and the reactions, the indifference to it. That's the thing that's killing me. The fact that I've grown up with people, they're indifferent to racism. They're indifferent to, you know, someone's franchise being taken away from them. And that is shocking to me, because I thought that in 2020, well, if the government can't get it wrong, at least my fellow citizens will unite and will change government. But what I'm seeing right now is that, you know, I'm watching my fellow citizens co-signing extrajudicial actions. And it's shocking to me, and it's saddening. So in answer to your question, what can I do, or what am I doing to, you know, be cognizant of the environment that we're living in? How do I live my day to day? You know, as a Black man in America, I've always had a target on my back. So I've never let my guard down. So this is nothing new. Now it's just real. You know, back in the 90s when I was growing up.
Now your fathers and mothers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers, and you're out there on the street. And like, I watched Leon, and I'm so happy that he has these live chats so I could see him. So when I see you guys putting your bodies out there, and you're not responsible to yourself anymore. So I look at the safety scenario.
Well, if I can add, Ozzy,
yes.
One of the things that's been truly amazing about this walk and this journey to the Montauk Lighthouse is that so many members of the community have come out to just be with us as we move from town to town and just express what we're trying to say. And the important thing is, I haven't even thought about the safety, because Lisa and Wooly and Sierra and Curtis, they've all been here, along with everyone else that stepped in, and they've said, this is important, so we're here for you. And that's why I think we have about 48 more miles to go. All we want to do is continue to move forward with this march. And we want to state, as Sierra so eloquently stated before, that acts of police brutality must stop. And everybody has to play a part in doing that. So what we're doing is, we're not worrying about the safety issue. We're only worrying about the opportunity to communicate with as many people as we can. And our goal is not to force someone to think the way we do. Our goal is not necessarily to get someone to support what we do. But as I've said in a couple of my posts, are you listening? Can you hear us? You see, because Breonna Taylor can't speak for herself anymore. Tamir Rice cannot speak for himself. Trayvon Martin cannot speak for himself. George Floyd cannot speak for himself. Sandra Bland can't speak. So we are speaking for them with each step we take. And if we change minds along the way, then I am so pleased with that.
On that point, Leon, have there been, in any of your experiences, have there been any minds changed within these last months that you guys have been marching, or even with Leon You?
I can't say that minds have been changed, but there have been some honest dialogue. I quoted someone who on Facebook the other day said that my actions were tantamount to lighting one candle at a time. And I thought that was profound, because that's what we're trying to do. You know, if in the course of these 118 miles, I meet someone and they fully understand what we're going through as Black men, as Black women, then the mission has been accomplished. Yes, we need to.
Curtis, have Curtis and you guys, have you noticed any or known anyone who's come over to the darker side? I gotta make light of it.
Yeah, that's true.
I was asked the question, how do you end racism? How do you end racism? And it took me a minute to think about it, and the response that I gave that person was, you can't change a racist person's thinking no more than you can tell an atheist to believe in God. It's difficult to change someone's belief when that's all they know, that's what they've learned, maybe that's what they were taught. So you can't tell a racist, don't be racist. But what you can do is you can show them how to love each other. You can give them love. We can begin as a community to come together and unite. We can give them an example of what it means to love someone unconditionally, regardless of where they are, how much money they have, what color their skin may be. And the more that you begin to show people kindness, love, the more that you begin to show what humility is, what empathy is, not sympathy. Sympathy is, I understand how you feel, or I feel sorry for you. But empathy is really being able to walk in that person's shoes. And if you can't walk in their shoes because the shoes are too big or the shoes don't fit, what you can do is you can try to walk with them along. And so this is how we change the world, by exactly what Mr. Leon said, one candle at a time. And the more we show love to one another, that is how we defeat racism.
Right. Ozzy, let me just add to that statement that Sierra just made.
Yeah.
What was amazing about today's walk, and we can't stress this enough, we walked from West Hampton, Long Island, to Hampton Bays, Long Island. And we were met along the way, for the purposes of illustration only, by a Caucasian woman holding a sign that said, Black Lives Matter. And then she joined us along with the other Caucasians that understood and appreciated what we were doing. We weren't out trying to recruit people to walk with us. But what was interesting about that scene was that as people drove past us, they looked up and they saw a group of 5 to 8 people, primarily Caucasian, and Sierra is right on the edge.
Gotta keep it light. I love that.
I know. But that's the change.
Yes.
That's the change. The change is people are saying there are things that are wrong, and I'm taking a stand. And as Eldridge Cleaver said a long, long time ago, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And the people that walk with us today have decided that they want to be part of the solution.
Lovely. And Lisa, what do you have to say?
Team Caucasian all the way. Woo! Almost what Mr. Leon just said, and again, same thing. I had the privilege to meet and correspond with Congressman John Lewis. And when I went down to SNCC's 50th anniversary, I got to spend a good amount of time just one-on-one talking with him, which is awesome all on its own. But I asked him in that, you know, how do we make the next generation of John Lewis's? Because it was a time when it seemed like, you know, Obama was in the White House, you know, people were pretending that civil rights weren't an issue anymore. Right. But so there was a real, like, people got comfortable instead of really working on the hard things.
Right.
And he said to me, he was like, well, I'm looking at it. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm looking at a young white woman that came down here because she thought civil rights were that important. He goes, that's where change starts. Mm-hmm. So with Leon's example today, that, you know, he's doing this walk and he's met with Team Caucasian, right. It makes sense.
So with the ending of your conversation with John Lewis, how did you leave it, and how has that impacted you?
So I was fortunate enough that me and him stayed in contact a couple of times since that moment. And really when I was just, you know, as an organizer, and I'm sure people feel this all over the place, you can feel really bogged down and alone, and as if everything you're doing is not making one bit of difference at all. And obviously that's not the case, but it's a feeling that every organizer has. Anybody doing social justice work, you know, feels that at some point. Yeah. So I would call his office and say, hey, you know, I'm just wondering if the congressman maybe has a few minutes for me. And he would always return my call, always. And I probably reached out to him maybe 4 or 5 times, and he was always, you know,
gracious,
very calm, reassuring, keep going, you're doing the right thing. So I kind of always have that, his very calm voice in the back of my head, which is great. Julian Bond also became kind of a mentor, and he would sing weird songs to me all the time, which was really funny. I feel like that was just him, but I'm like a normal person that just kind of fell into extraordinary circumstances at times. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy that I had some of those teachers, that I was able to get like firsthand, like if you were an organizer and you had one piece of advice to give somebody, what would it be?
Right.
And I've gotten that from a lot of, you know, these amazing organizers, and it keeps you going, honestly.
So let me find out now from each of you guys, because we're going to wrap up. What is the next step? Where are you now in your, we know where we are with Leon's March. What is there a plan to do XYZ? And what is that XYZ? For BLM, for any of the other things that you're involved?
There's absolutely a plan. I've worn my Black Lives Matter t-shirts shopping in Target or doing my normal day-to-day errands, which draws attention, which is what I want. I want to wear my shirt because I'm proud. Black lives do matter. And when we're doing all of these protests, after a while, sometimes it can be a little discouraging. Sometimes we feel like, are we doing, like Lisa said, is what we're doing, like, does it matter in the long run? The name of the organization is LI United, Educate, Inspire, Empower. And my goal is to begin working on the core issues that face and oppress the Black and brown communities. Housing is a big issue. Education and lack of educational services for special needs children in the Black and brown community is a big issue. Domestic violence, dating violence is another big issue. And when we look at all of these issues, everything falls underneath racism. And it's systemic racism and systemic issues that our Black and brown communities have been facing. And so my goal with this organization is to unify the community by providing education, by providing financial education, enabling families to buy homes, to work with local officials and to work with the different townships in creating housing programs and opportunities for the Black and brown community. We need change within our communities, and to start with one community at a time until eventually it spreads.
I'm a member of the African American Leadership Council, and we meet weekly to discuss, how the company Fiserv can support Black businesses and support the empowerment of, our African American workforce. There's actually an initiative being unveiled right now through the company called Back to Business, in which there's $10 million on the line, in which we're distributing to minority-owned businesses. We started in Brooklyn. We're expanding to other parts of New York City. And I'm trying to head the operation for Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk County. So that is how I'm going to stay involved. And I wouldn't call it the next step. I just call it the continuing of what I have been doing.
Right. Lovely. Lisa?
One of my main focuses is police reform, and fighting for that ongoing police reform, and building those relationships within the police department, right? So I always want to support and raise up good police that are going above and beyond, and really trying to heal some of these wounds. And I want to be able to call out the people that aren't doing their job and they're hurting our community. So that's really personally like what I'm gonna keep on doing. And in the immediate, I'm a big vote person. I'm pushing census and get out the vote.
Well, Ozzy, before I talk about what's next relative to my thoughts, I want to thank you for hosting us on your podcast. When we started this journey some 7-8-9 days ago, I really did not know where it was going, and the pieces have fallen into place. So let me take this time to thank Lisa Finn, the reporter from the Patch out here, and of course, Kitty Merrill, who wrote, both Lisa and Kitty wrote some fantastic pieces about this 118-mile walk. And I'd be really remiss if I didn't thank all the wonderful people that's come out and walked with us and just spent time with us just to send this message out. And that started from the moment I left the 59th Street Bridge, and right now sitting at dinner with us. And I'm going to turn the camera around.
Yes, I saw
so you could see
there.
who's having dinner with us. Can you guys see? Are they on the camera?
I see the gentleman who met you this morning.
That's John.
Right.
Melissa.
That's Melissa.
Hi.
And that's Mary Alice. They have been some major supporters. And they've come out and they've given of their time to be with us. Mary Alice is as Caucasian could be. And she's sitting here right now in her Black Lives Matter shirt, and she's always anyway. So let me just tell you, my thought is, when I was moved to do this, the truth was I didn't have a plan. I knew what I had to do. I'm hoping that by the time we get to Montauk Lighthouse on either Saturday or Sunday, that we can sit down and have a round table and talk about next steps. I'd be disingenuous if I tried to tell you right now what the next step would be from my perspective. But I'm hoping that what we've done over the last 8-9 days and what we'll do over the next 4 or 5 days will lead us to that answer. And we do want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of your podcast.
It's a natural evolution. And let me say to the folks who are listening, thank you, folks, for spending your valuable time with us today. Please care to share. And remember, when you're on your beat, stay on the sunny side of the street safely and mask up like Leon does and has been doing and will be doing for the rest of his 118-mile walk. Thank you, Lisa, Sierra, Curtis, Willie, Leon. God bless all of you. Stay safe.
Ozzy, can I say one thing?
Yes.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes.
Always.
Yes. Leon,
Thank you.
all day long.
Thanks.